The huge doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound. Captain Jake Morrison walked through them with steady steps. His black military uniform looked simple next to all the bright colors and strange shapes around him. Lieutenant Amy Foster followed close behind him. Her face showed no fear even though they were about to meet the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The chamber was enormous. It could easily fit 10 football stadiums inside it. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Hundreds of different alien species sat in curved rows that went up and up like a giant theater. Each species looked completely different from humans. Jake looked around at the alien delegates. The reptilian representatives were huge. They stood over 8 feet tall with thick green scales covering their bodies. Their yellow eyes watched everything with cold intelligence. Sharp teeth showed when they spoke. Their leader was Ambassador Zekthor. He was the biggest of them all and wore golden armor that gleamed under the bright lights. The Vexani delegates looked like they were made of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies and created rainbow patterns on the walls. They moved slowly and spoke in voices that sounded like wind chimes. Each word they said seemed to ring in the air for several seconds. Floating near the ceiling were the Nebula Collective representatives. They had no solid bodies at all. Instead, they looked like colorful clouds of gas that shifted and changed shape constantly. When they spoke, their voices seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jake and Amy walked to the center of the chamber. A small platform waited for them there. It looked tiny compared to all the massive alien seating areas around them. The platform rose slowly into the air until they were at eye level with most of the delegates. Ambassador Zekthor leaned forward in his seat. His massive claws tapped against the metal armrest. "So these are the humans," he said. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. "The species from the small planet called Earth." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jake could hear dozens of different alien languages mixing together. Some sounded like music. Others sounded like machines. A few sounded like nothing he had ever heard before. "Yes, sir," Jake replied. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's sound system. "We come here today to offer Earth's membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. We want to help protect the galaxy from threats." More murmurs filled the air. This time Jake could hear something else mixed in with the alien voices. It sounded like laughter. Quiet at first, but growing louder. The reptilian delegates were the loudest. Their laughing sounded like angry dogs barking. Counselor Vexani stepped forward. Her crystal body caught the light and threw sparkles across the chamber walls. "How generous of your species," she said. Her voice had a mocking tone that needed no translation. "Please tell us about Earth's military capabilities." Amy stepped forward and activated a small device. Holographic images appeared in the air above their platform. The images showed Earth's military forces. Pictures of soldiers, tanks, airplanes, and ships rotated slowly in the air. "Earth can contribute 50,000 trained soldiers to the coalition forces," Amy announced. "Our military has extensive combat experience and advanced training programs. We also offer our industrial capacity and technological knowledge." The chamber fell completely silent for about 3 seconds. Then the laughter started again. This time it was much louder. Even the gas-form Nebula Collective made sounds that could only be laughter. It sounded like wind rushing through caves. Ambassador Zekthor stood up to his full height. 50,000 soldiers?" he asked. His voice was so loud that it echoed off the chamber walls. "Did you perhaps forget a few zeros in your count?" "No, sir," Jake replied calmly. 50,000 is our current available force for coalition service." The laughter grew even louder. Some of the smaller alien species were making sounds that hurt Jake's ears. A delegate from the insectoid hives clicked his mandibles together rapidly. This was their way of showing extreme amusement. "Let me help. You understand the situation," Zekthor said. He activated his own holographic display. Images of massive armies filled the air. "The Reptilian Dominion contributes 12 million shock troops to the coalition. The Vexani provide 8 million. Crystal warriors. Even the smallest member species contribute at least 200,000 soldiers." More images appeared. Jake saw alien soldiers that looked like walking tanks. Others had 4 arms and carried multiple weapons. Some were so big that they needed special vehicles just to move around. The numbers kept getting bigger and bigger. The Aquatic Federation provides 6 million amphibious assault troops, Zekthor continued. The Machine Collective offers 4 million robotic soldiers that never need rest or food. The Hive Worlds contribute 3 million insectoid warriors that can survive in any environment. Jake watched all the images, but his expression never changed. Amy stood beside him with the same calm look on her face. They both knew these numbers were coming. Earth's intelligence services had prepared them well. Your 50,000 soldiers, Zekthor said, represent less than 1% of our smallest members' contribution. Why should we take such a tiny force seriously? Because they're human soldiers, Jake replied simply. This answer caused even more laughter. The reptilian delegates were slapping their claws against their seats. The Vexani were making their chiming sounds of amusement. Even some of the more serious species were showing signs of finding this funny. Counselor Vexani floated closer to the human platform. Perhaps your species would be more suitable for support roles, she suggested. Her tone was the kind adults use when talking to small children. Logistics assistance, medical aid, technical support. These are important jobs too. We appreciate the suggestion, Amy said politely. But our soldiers are trained for combat operations. We believe they can make a significant contribution to coalition defense efforts. Combat operations, repeated a delegate from the Winged Hunters. His species looked like giant eagles with metal beaks. Against what? Space pirates? Smugglers? Against any threat to coalition space, Jake answered. The chamber filled with sound. Again. Not just laughter this time, but actual conversations. Aliens were talking to each other in their own languages. Jake could see them pointing at the human platform and shaking their heads. Some were making gestures that were clearly dismissive. Ambassador, Zekthor raised one massive claw for silence. The chamber gradually became quiet again. Very well, he said. The Galactic Defense Coalition will accept Earth's membership. Your 50,000 soldiers will be assigned to patrol duties in the Outer Rim territories. Patrol duties? Amy asked. Safe sectors, Zekthor explained. Quiet areas where nothing ever happens. Your soldiers can get used to working with alien technology and coalition procedures. Think of it as training. Jake understood what this really meant. They were being given the most boring and unimportant jobs possible. The coalition was accepting Earth's membership, but not taking them seriously at all. We accept those assignments, Jake said. Our soldiers will do their duty wherever they're needed. Excellent, Counselor Vexani said. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Coalition, humans. Try not to get in anyone's way. The platform began to lower back to the floor. As it did, Jake could still hear alien voices throughout the chamber. They were still laughing and making jokes. He heard the words "tiny army" repeated several times in different languages. Jake and Amy walked toward the chamber exit. Neither of them looked back at the aliens who were still finding their offer so amusing. They had delivered their message and received their answer. Now it was time to return to Earth and prepare their forces for whatever came next. As they reached the doors, Amy leaned close to Jake. They have no idea what they just accepted into their coalition, she said quietly. Jake nodded. They'll learn soon enough. 6 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Defense Coalition. Colonel Ben Hayes stood on the observation deck of Outpost 7 and watched the stars through the thick glass windows. The space station hung in orbit around a small moon, in the Kepler sector. This was the furthest edge of Coalition space. Nothing interesting ever happened here. Major Lisa Chen walked up beside him. She carried a data pad with the latest reports from their scattered forces. All companies are reporting normal patrol status, she said. No contacts, no threats, no excitement. Ben nodded. Their 50,000 soldiers were spread across 12 different worlds in this quiet sector. Each group was doing exactly what the aliens had given them to do. They patrolled empty space routes, checked on mining operations, and made sure everything stayed peaceful and boring. The men are getting restless, Lisa continued. They joined the coalition to fight for something important. Instead, they're playing security guards for empty planets. I know, Ben replied. But orders are orders. The coalition put us here for a reason. The reason was clear to everyone. The alien leaders wanted to keep Earth's tiny military force somewhere, safe and out of the way. They had made it obvious that they did not trust human soldiers to handle real threats. The assignment was meant to be an insult disguised as a job. Suddenly, alarm bells started ringing throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed on every wall. The main communication system activated with a loud crackling sound. All stations, came Admiral Kextar's voice. The reptilian commander sounded different than usual. His normally confident tone was replaced by something that might have been fear. Priority alert for all coalition forces. Long-range sensors have detected massive enemy fleet approaching our territory. Ben and Lisa ran to the main command center. Other human officers were already gathering around the large display screens. The screens showed a three-dimensional map of coalition space with thousands of small dots representing their planets and stations. Computer, show sensor data from the Advance Warning Network, Ben ordered. New images appeared on the screens. These showed space far beyond coalition territory. What they saw made everyone in the room go quiet. Hundreds of black ships were moving through space in perfect formation. Each ship was enormous. Some of them were bigger than entire space stations. My God, whispered Captain Tony Rodriguez. How many ships is that? Computer is counting over. 400,000 vessels, Lisa reported. And they're all moving toward coalition space. The communication system activated again. This time, Admiral Kextar's voice was much louder and more urgent. This is Admiral Kextar to all coalition forces. The approaching fleet has been identified as the Void Horde. This is not a drill. All military units are ordered to prepare for immediate combat operations. The Void Horde. Every soldier in the room knew that name. They were the nightmare that kept alien military commanders awake at night. For over 50 years, the Horde had been moving through this part of the galaxy. They consumed entire star systems and left nothing behind but empty space. Sir, called Lieutenant Dan Parker from his communication station. We're receiving detailed intelligence reports about the Horde fleet. Put it on the main screen, Ben ordered. The display changed to show technical information about Horde ships and soldiers. What they read was not encouraging. Each Horde vessel carried weapons that could crack planets apart. Their soldiers were described as nearly indestructible killing machines. Most disturbing of all was their record of victories. In 50 years of warfare, the Void Horde had never been defeated in direct combat. Look at this, Major Chen pointed to one section of the report. It says here that Horde soldiers average 7 feet tall and wear powered armor that can stop almost any weapon. Each individual Horde warrior can fight dozens of regular troops. More information kept scrolling across the screens. The Horde used tactics that no other species had ever encountered. They overwhelmed their enemies through superior numbers, advanced technology, and complete ruthlessness. They took no prisoners and showed no mercy. Admiral Kextar is mobilizing everything we have, reported Sergeant Kate Williams from another communication station. 12 million reptilian shock troops, 8 million Vexani crystal warriors, and support forces from every member species. Ben watched the tactical displays as coalition forces began moving throughout their territory. It was the largest military mobilization in galactic history. Ships and soldiers from hundreds of different worlds were converging on strategic positions to meet the Horde advance. The first major battle happened 3 days later at the Rigel system. Ben and his officers watched the engagement through long-range sensors. The coalition had assembled over 20 million soldiers and thousands of warships. It should have been enough to stop any enemy force. It was not enough. The battle lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, the coalition forces were in full retreat. The mighty reptilian shock troops, feared throughout the galaxy as the fiercest warriors alive, had broken and run after suffering terrible losses. The Vexani crystal. Warriors lasted a little longer, but they too were eventually scattered and defeated. This is impossible, Lieutenant Parker said as he watched the tactical reports. 20 million soldiers just got wiped out by the Horde advance force. How many Horde troops were in that battle? Ben asked. Lisa checked her datapad. Intelligence. Estimates about 2 million Horde soldiers and 5,000 ships. The numbers were shocking. 2 million Horde warriors had defeated 20 million coalition troops. The aliens' best soldiers had been completely outclassed by an enemy that seemed to be made for warfare. More reports came in over the next few hours. The Horde was not slowing down after their victory. They were pressing their attack and moving deeper into coalition space. Panic was spreading through alien military commands as they realized their traditional tactics were useless against this enemy. Admiral Kextar's voice came over the communication system again. This time he sounded exhausted and desperate. All coalition forces are ordered to fall back to fortified positions. Repeat, all forces fall back immediately. Do not engage Horde units in open battle. The retreat continued for 2 more days. Coalition forces abandoned system after system as the Horde advance rolled forward like an unstoppable wave. Millions of alien civilians fled their homes as their military protectors ran away from the approaching enemy. On the 3rd day, Ben received a direct communication from Admiral Kextar himself. The reptilian commander appeared on the main screen, looking tired and defeated. His golden armor was scorched and dented from recent fighting. Colonel Hayes, the admiral said, I am contacting all remaining coalition forces with new orders. The Horde advance is moving faster than expected. Long-range projections show they will reach your sector within 48 hours. Ben nodded. He had been expecting this news. What are your orders, Admiral? Prepare your forces for immediate evacuation, Kextar replied. Transport ships are being sent to extract all coalition personnel from the outer rim sectors. Your soldiers will be relocated to the core worlds where we are establishing our final defensive lines. Evacuation, sir? Ben asked. Yes, Colonel. Your sector cannot be defended with only 50,000 troops. The Horde will overrun your positions before you can call for help. There is no point in wasting lives on a hopeless fight. Ben looked around the command center at his officers. They were all watching him and waiting for his response. These were good soldiers who had joined the coalition to make a difference. They had been stuck in this quiet sector for months doing meaningless patrol duties while real battles happened elsewhere. Now finally they had a chance to prove what human soldiers could do. The aliens expected them to run away just like every other coalition force had done. They expected Earth's tiny army to tuck tail and flee at the first sign of real danger. Admiral, Ben said calmly, we appreciate the evacuation offer, but we're going to have to decline. Kextar's reptilian features showed confusion. Decline? Colonel, did you understand my message? The Horde will reach your sector in 2 days with overwhelming force. You cannot possibly hold your positions. Maybe not, Ben replied. But we're going to try. Please inform Coalition Command that human forces are moving to intercept the Horde. Advance. The Admiral stared at him through the communication screen for several long seconds. Colonel Hayes, you have 50,000 soldiers. The Horde advance fleet has 200,000 troops and supporting warships. This is not courage, this is suicide. Ben smiled for the first time in months. Admiral, we'll see about that. Hayes out. He cut the communication link before the Admiral could respond. The command center was completely quiet, as every officer waited to hear what their commander would say next. Well, Ben said as he turned to face his people. Looks like we finally get to do some real soldiering. Lisa, send word to all company commanders. Tell them to prepare for combat operations. We have some aliens to educate about human warfare. The Void Horde advance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. 200 massive black warships hung in space like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Each ship was over a mile long and covered with weapon turrets that could destroy cities with single shots. On the bridge of the lead Horde vessel, Commander Vexnash studied the sensor readings with cold satisfaction. His species had conquered 47 star systems in the past 5 years. This would be number 48. The sensors showed only a few small human settlements on the planets below, and a tiny defensive force that hardly seemed worth mentioning. What opposition do we face? Asked Subcommander Kreltor as he examined the tactical displays. Minimal resistance, Vexnash replied. His voice sounded like grinding metal. Local sensors detect approximately 50,000 defending troops. spread across several worlds. No significant warships or defensive installations. Kreltor made a sound that might have been laughter in his species. 50,000? The coalition must truly be desperate if they are leaving such small forces to defend entire systems. It matters little, Vexnash said. Deploy the first wave. 500 landing craft with 10,000 troops. That should be more than sufficient to clear these worlds. Meanwhile, on the mining planet Kepler-7, Captain Tony Rodriguez watched the Horde ships through his field binoculars. His Alpha Company was dug in along a ridge overlooking the main settlement. 500 human soldiers waited in carefully prepared positions among the rocks and mining equipment. "Here they come," called Sergeant Kate Williams from her position, near the communication array. "Landing craft approaching from the northwest, looks like about 50 ships." Tony lowered his binoculars and activated his radio. "All units, this is Alpha 6. Enemy landing force inbound. Remember your training and stick to the plan. Wait for my signal before opening fire." The Horde landing craft were huge black rectangles that moved through the air without making any sound. They landed in the flat area below the ridge and began unloading their troops. What came out of those ships made even the experienced human soldiers pause for a moment. Void Horde warriors stood, 7 feet tall in their powered armor. The armor was black as space and covered with spikes and sharp edges. Each warrior carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Their helmets had glowing red eyepieces that scanned constantly for targets. "Count is 5,000 enemy troops," reported Lieutenant Dan Parker. "They're forming up in standard attack formation and moving toward the settlement." Tony watched the Horde soldiers advance. They moved in perfect lines across the open ground. Each step was exactly the same length. Each warrior held his weapon at exactly the same angle. It was like watching a parade of death machines. The Horde had used these same tactics on dozens of other worlds. They would advance in overwhelming force and crush any resistance through superior numbers and firepower. No enemy had ever been able to stand against their disciplined assault, but the Horde had never fought humans before. "Wait for it," Tony said into his radio as the enemy formation came closer. "Let them get into the kill zone." The Void Horde warriors reached the base of the ridge and began climbing. Their heavy armor made each step slow but unstoppable. Red energy beams shot from their weapons toward human positions. The beams burned through rock and metal like they were made of paper. "Now," Tony said quietly. The ridge exploded with gunfire. 500 human soldiers opened up at the same time from carefully chosen positions. But they were not firing at random. Each squad had been given specific targets and sectors of responsibility. The overlapping fields of fire created a deadly web that no enemy could escape. The Horde advance stopped immediately. Warriors that had seemed unstoppable just seconds before began falling under the precise human fire. Their powered armor could stop most weapons, but the humans were aiming for weak spots. Joints, vision slits, and weapon mounts became targets for marksmen who had trained for years. "First rank down," reported Sergeant Williams. "Enemy formation is disrupted." But the Horde was not finished. The surviving warriors began returning fire with their energy weapons. Red beams swept across the ridge looking for human positions. Several soldiers were hit and went down screaming. "Second wave incoming," called Lieutenant Parker. "Enemy reinforcements landing behind the first group." Tony smiled grimly. The Horde was doing exactly what he had expected. They were pouring more troops into what they thought was a standard battle. They had no idea that the humans were not fighting a standard battle at all. "Williams, take your squad and hit their left flank," Tony ordered. "Parker, move your people around to their rear. I want these aliens surrounded in 15 minutes. The human soldiers began moving through the rocky terrain with practiced skill. They had trained for months in this exact environment. Every boulder, every mining tunnel, every piece of equipment was part of their defensive plan. The Void Horde found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The human soldiers did not stay in fixed positions where they could be targeted. Instead, they moved constantly, appearing from unexpected directions to fire a few shots before disappearing again. "What kind of tactics are these?" Subcommander Kreltor demanded as he watched the battle from orbit. "The humans are not fighting in formation. They are scattered everywhere." "It does not matter," Commander Vexnash replied. though he sounded less certain than before. Deploy the second wave. Another 5,000 troops should overwhelm their positions. More Horde landing craft descended toward the planet's surface. But as they approached the landing zone, human soldiers emerged from hidden positions and began firing portable rockets. 3 landing craft exploded in midair before they could discharge their troops. Sergeant Kate Williams led her squad through a maze of mining tunnels that ran under the battlefield. They emerged behind the main Horde formation and began attacking from an unexpected direction. The alien warriors turned to face this new threat, only to find human soldiers appearing from 3 other directions as well. "They are everywhere," one Horde warrior reported over their communication system. "We cannot establish fire superiority." The battle continued for 6 hours. The Horde kept sending more troops to reinforce their ground forces, but each wave found itself facing the same problem. The humans refused to fight the way other species fought. They would not stand still and trade shots. They would not form neat lines for the Horde weapons to target. Instead, the human soldiers used every piece of cover, every tactical advantage, and every trick they had learned in decades of warfare. They turned the mining complex into a fortress where every tunnel was a trap and every building was a firing position. Lieutenant Dan Parker found himself alone with just 10 soldiers, surrounded by 50 Horde warriors. Instead of surrendering, or fighting to the death in place, he led his men through a series of maintenance tunnels that brought them out behind the enemy force. A few well-placed grenades and accurate rifle fire eliminated the entire Horde unit in less than 5 minutes. As the sun began to set over Kepler-7, the impossible happened. The surviving Horde forces began to retreat toward their landing craft. For the first time in their recorded history, Void Horde warriors were withdrawing from a battlefield. Captain Tony Rodriguez stood on the ridge and watched the black ships lift off into space. Around him, his soldiers were counting their casualties. 12 humans had been killed and 36 wounded. But scattered across the battlefield below were the bodies of over 4,000 Horde warriors. "Alpha 6 to base," Tony said into his radio. "Kepler-7 is secure. Enemy forces have withdrawn. We are holding the field." The response came from Colonel Ben Hayes himself. The senior officer's voice carried across the communication network to human forces on a dozen different worlds. "Confirmed Alpha 6, outstanding work. All companies report similar results. The Horde advance has been stopped." On the bridge of the Horde command ship, Commander Vexnash stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. His advance force of 50,000 warriors had been completely defeated by the small human garrison. Less than half his troops had made it back to their ships. "How is this possible?" Sub-Commander Kreltor asked. "We had overwhelming superiority in numbers and firepower." Vexnash did not answer immediately. He was studying recordings of the battle, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The humans had fought unlike any species the Horde had ever faced. They used tactics that seemed to come from nowhere and strategies that made no sense. "Send a message to the main fleet," Vexnash finally ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements, many reinforcements." "How many, Commander?" Vexnash looked at the casualty reports one more time. 50,000 Horde warriors defeated by a handful of humans. It was impossible, but it had happened. "All of them," he said quietly. "Send all of them." News of the human victory spread through Coalition space faster than light communication could carry it. On worlds that had never heard of Earth, alien military commanders gathered around communication screens to watch battle recordings from Kepler-7. What they saw changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. Admiral Kextar stood in his command center aboard the flagship Dominion's Pride. Around him, dozens of reptilian officers watched the tactical displays with amazement. The recording showed 50,000 Void Horde warriors being systematically destroyed by 500 human soldiers. "Play it again," Kextar ordered. "Focus on Sector 7 where the humans flanked the main Horde formation." The holographic display showed Captain Rodriguez's soldiers moving through mining tunnels like they had built them themselves. They appeared behind enemy lines, struck with devastating precision, then disappeared before the Horde could respond. It was unlike anything in reptilian military doctrine. "How do they move so fast?" asked Colonel Vexkol. Their armor is lighter than ours, but they carry the same equipment load. It is not about the equipment, Kextar said slowly. Look at how they coordinate. Each soldier knows exactly where his companions are without constant communication. They fight like they share the same mind. Meanwhile, the Void Horde was having very different discussions. Commander Vexnash stood before the Supreme War Council in the main fleet's command chamber. The chamber was dark, except for red lights that cast evil shadows on the walls. 12 Horde war leaders sat in a circle around him. Explain this defeat, commanded Supreme Leader Grelthok. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. 50,000 of our finest warriors defeated by primitives with simple weapons. The humans do not fight like other species, Vexnash replied. They do not form lines for us to target. They do not hold fixed positions for our artillery to destroy. They move like shadows and strike like lightning. Excuses, growled another war leader. We have crushed 47 civilizations. These humans cannot be so different. With respect, war leader, they are completely different. They treat war like an art form. Every move has a purpose, every position serves multiple functions. They turn our own tactics against us. Supreme Leader Grelthok leaned forward in his throne. Then we will adapt. Deploy 200,000 warriors to the human sector. Overwhelm them with numbers they cannot possibly handle. The new Horde offensive began 3 days later. 500 warships carrying 200,000 elite troops entered the Kepler sector. This was nearly a quarter of the entire Horde invasion fleet. They were determined to crush the human resistance before it could spread to other species. Major Sam Taylor received word of the incoming fleet while standing in the command bunker on Kepler 12. His 15,000 soldiers were spread across 3 star systems, each group facing impossible odds. The math was simple and terrifying. 200,000 Horde warriors against 15,000 humans. Sir, called Lieutenant Paul Grant from the communication station. We're receiving surrender demands from the Horde fleet commander. Let me hear it, Sam said. The message was broadcast in perfect English. Human forces, this is Supreme War Leader Grelthok. You have fought bravely but uselessly. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will make your species suffer for generations. Sam looked around the bunker at his officers. Captain Ellen Brooks was studying tactical displays. Lieutenant Grant was monitoring enemy communications. Sergeant Rick Adams was checking weapon systems. None of them looked afraid. They looked ready. Send a reply, Sam ordered. Tell the war leader that humans do not surrender. If he wants these worlds, he can come and take them. The second battle began on Kepler 12, a mountainous world covered with deep valleys and high peaks. The Horde landed 60,000 troops in the main valley and began their advance toward human positions. This time they were more careful. They sent scouts ahead and kept their formations spread out. It did not help them. Sergeant Rick Adams held the northern pass with 200 soldiers. The pass was the only way through the mountains for 50 miles in either direction. 8,000 Horde warriors needed to get through that pass to reach the human settlements on the other side. Here they come, Adams called to his men. The Horde advance looked like a black river flowing up the mountain slope. Their heavy armor glinted in the sunlight as they climbed toward the pass. But Adams had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment. Every rock had been moved into position. Every tree had been cut to create obstacles. Every cave and crevice had been turned into a firing position. The pass was no longer just a gap in the mountains. It was a killing ground designed by human, military engineers. The first Horde warriors reached the pass entrance and began taking fire from 3 directions. But when they tried to return fire, the humans were already moving to new positions. Adams had taught his soldiers to fire 2 shots and then relocate. Never stay in one place long enough for the enemy to target you. First defensive line is holding, reported Corporal Amy Logan over the radio. Enemy advance has stopped at checkpoint, Alpha. The Horde commander on the ground made the same mistake his species always made. He sent more troops to overwhelm the human position. Another 2,000 warriors began climbing toward the pass. They found themselves facing not just the original defenders, but hidden positions that had not revealed themselves during the first attack. Captain Ellen Brooks was leading special operations teams on the other side of the planet. Her mission was different from the defensive battles. She was taking the fight directly to the enemy. Her teams had infiltrated 3 Horde landing sites and were attacking from inside their own perimeter. "Charges are set on the command ship," Brooks reported from inside a Horde vessel. 60 seconds to detonation. Her team had spent 6 hours crawling through enemy lines to reach the massive transport ship. Once inside, they had moved through maintenance tunnels to reach the ship's power core. The Horde had excellent security against external attacks, but they had never faced enemies who could infiltrate their own ships. The explosion lit up the night sky. The Horde command ship broke apart and crashed into the valley below, taking 3,000 enemy soldiers with it. The remaining Horde forces found themselves without communications or coordination. Lieutenant Paul Grant was coordinating the defense of Kepler-15, an industrial world with large cities and manufacturing centers. The Horde had landed 80,000 troops and were trying to capture the main spaceport. Grant had only 3,000 soldiers to stop them. He did not try to meet the enemy in open battle. Instead, he turned the entire city into a fortress. Every building became a fighting position. Every street became a trap. Every factory became a maze where Horde soldiers could be separated and destroyed in small groups. "Block 7 is secured," reported one of his squad leaders. "Enemy force eliminated with minimal casualties." "Move to Block 9, Grant ordered. "Use the tunnel system to avoid their patrols." The urban warfare continued for 5 days. The Horde controlled the spaceport, but they could not advance into the city. Human soldiers appeared from sewers, rooftops, and basement windows. They struck hard and fast before melting back into the urban landscape. Horde warriors who had conquered planets found themselves lost in a single city. Their heavy armor was useless in narrow hallways. Their energy weapons could not target enemies who fired from hidden positions and immediately disappeared. On the 6th day, something unprecedented happened. Void Horde forces began retreating from all 3 worlds simultaneously. The species that had never known defeat was withdrawing from battle for the 2nd time in their history. Major Sam Taylor stood on a hilltop and watched the black ships lift off from Kepler-12. His casualty reports showed 300 human soldiers killed and 800 wounded. The Horde had lost over 30,000 troops and half their equipment. "Major," called Lieutenant Grant over the radio from Kepler-15. "The city is secure. Enemy forces have completely withdrawn." "Confirmed," replied Captain Brooks from her position on Kepler-9. "All Horde units are retreating to their ships. The sector is clear." Sam activated his communicator to contact Colonel Hayes at sector headquarters. "Sir, this is Taylor. All 3 systems are secure. The Horde offensive has been repelled." There was a long pause before Hayes responded. "Confirmed, Major. Outstanding work by all units. Casualty reports show we stopped 200,000 enemy troops with 15,000 of our own. The numbers were impossible, but they were real. 15,000 human soldiers had defeated an enemy force, more than 10 times their size. The mathematics of warfare had been completely rewritten in the Kepler sector." Aboard the Horde command ship, Supreme War Leader Gralthok stared at the tactical displays in silence. His species had never experienced anything like this. 2 major defeats in less than a week, hundreds of thousands of elite warriors destroyed by a tiny human force. "What are your orders, Supreme Leader?" asked Commander Vexnash. Gralthok turned away from the displays. For the first time in his long military career, he did not know what to do next. The humans had broken every rule of warfare that his species understood. "Send word to the main fleet," he said finally. "Tell them we need everything. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we have. All of our forces, Supreme Leader." That, the final Void Horde fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm cloud made of metal and death. 1,000 warships hung in space around the home world of humanity. 800,000 Horde warriors prepared for what their leaders promised would be the last battle of the war. Supreme War Leader Gralthok stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the blue planet below. This small world had produced the soldiers who had shattered his unstoppable army. Now he would end the human threat forever by destroying their home. Deploy all forces, he commanded. I want every human city burning within 6 hours. On Earth, General Frank Miller watched the enemy fleet through the orbital defense network. The old soldier had seen many battles in his long career, but nothing like this. The Horde had brought more ships than Earth had ever faced in its entire history. Sir, reported his aide, Colonel Susan Wright. Coalition forces are arriving to assist in the defense. Frank looked at the tactical displays. Admiral Kextar had brought what remained of the reptilian fleet. Counselor Vexani led a formation of crystal warrior ships. Dozens of other species had sent whatever forces they could spare. It was the largest allied fleet ever assembled. But Frank noticed something different about these alien commanders. They were not laughing at humanity anymore. Instead, they were asking for advice. General Miller, came Admiral Kextar's voice over the communication system. Reptilian forces request permission to operate under human tactical command. Confirmed, Admiral, Frank replied. Captain Nick Davis will coordinate all space operations. Follow his orders as if they came from me. Captain Nick Davis took command of the combined fleet from his position aboard the human flagship. The ship was small compared to the massive alien vessels around it, but every coalition commander was watching his orders carefully. All ships, this is Davis, Nick said into his communicator. We are not going to fight the way the Horde expects. Form up in attack formation Delta. We're going to hit them hard and fast before they can organize. The coalition fleet moved forward in a formation that no alien species had ever used before. Instead of the traditional line of battle, the ships were arranged in small groups that could support each other while staying mobile. It was a human naval tactic adapted for space warfare. The Horde fleet was enormous, but it was also predictable. They formed their ships into the same massive formations they had used for 50 years. Each ship had its assigned position and role. It was an impressive sight, but it was also exactly what the humans wanted to see. All groups begin attack run, Captain Davis ordered. Target their command ships first. Break their communications and coordination. The coalition ships struck like a hammer hitting glass. Small groups of human and alien vessels darted between the massive Horde formations, hitting key targets and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The reptilian ships found that human tactics made their natural aggression much more effective. Direct hit on Horde command vessel, reported Lieutenant Carol Shaw from her weapons station. Their fleet coordination is breaking down. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the real battle was just beginning. Horde landing craft began descending toward every major city on the planet. Each transport carried 500 elite warriors equipped with the most advanced weapons in the Horde arsenal. But Earth was not like other planets the Horde had conquered. This world had been preparing for war for months. Every city had been turned into a fortress. Every citizen had been trained in basic combat techniques. The entire planet was ready to fight. Major Julie Brooks commanded the defense of Chicago. Her 10,000 soldiers were spread throughout the massive city, turning skyscrapers into sniper nests and subway tunnels into supply routes. When the Horde landed in Grant Park, they found themselves in the middle of the most complex urban battlefield they had ever seen. Enemy forces are spreading out through the downtown area, reported Sergeant Kevin Clark from his position on the 20th floor of a hotel. They're trying to secure major intersections. Let them, Julie replied. Once they commit to those positions, we'll show them why urban warfare is different from open battle. The Horde warriors moved through Chicago streets with their usual confidence. They had conquered cities on dozens of worlds using the same tactics. Secure key points, eliminate resistance, and move to the next objective. But Chicago fought back, in ways no other city ever had. Human soldiers appeared from building to building, moving through internal passages the Horde did not know existed. Every intersection became a trap. Every alley became an ambush point. Lieutenant Chris Murphy led his company through the subway system beneath the city. They emerged behind Horde positions and struck before the enemy knew they were there. The underground tunnels allowed human forces to appear anywhere in the city within minutes. This is impossible, one Horde unit leader reported over their communication system. We secure a building and humans appear in the next one. We clear a street and they attack from the sewers. How many soldiers do they have? The answer was fewer than the Horde thought, but more effective than they could imagine. Each human soldier was trained to use the urban environment as a weapon. They knew every building, every tunnel, every possible firing position in their city. Captain Steve Walsh was leading a special assault team against the main Horde command post. The enemy had set up their headquarters in the Willis Tower, thinking the height would give them a tactical advantage. They had not considered that humans were experts at fighting in tall buildings. Charges set on floors 40 and 50. Walsh reported over his radio. When these go off, their command structure will be cut in half. Confirmed, replied Major Brooks. All units prepare for final assault. When their command post goes down, we hit every Horde position simultaneously. The explosions rocked the entire city. The Willis Tower swayed but did not fall exactly as planned. The Horde commanders found themselves trapped on the upper floors with no communication to their forces below. At the same time, human soldiers attacked every Horde position in the city. They came from above through windows, from below through basement entrances, and from the sides through building connections. The coordinated assault was devastating. Similar battles were happening in every major city on Earth. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all were defending themselves with the same tactics. Human soldiers turned their own cities into weapons against the invaders. In space, Captain Davis was coordinating the final assault on the Horde fleet. The alien formations were breaking apart under the constant hit-and-run attacks. Ships that had seemed invincible were now burning wrecks floating in space. All units press the attack, Davis ordered. They're breaking. Don't give them time to regroup. The Horde fleet began to retreat for the third time in their history. But this time, there was nowhere to go. Earth's orbital defenses had been activated, and coalition ships surrounded them on all sides. Supreme War Leader Gralthok watched his mighty fleet being destroyed piece by piece. The humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had turned the Horde's own tactics against them, and made them work better than the original. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human planet." "Put it on the main screen," Gralthok ordered. General Frank Miller appeared on the display. The old human soldier looked tired, but victorious. Behind him, reports were coming in from cities around the world. Chicago secure, New York secure, London secure. One by one, every Horde landing force was being eliminated. "Supreme War Leader," Frank said calmly, "I'm offering you one chance to surrender. Your fleet is surrounded and your ground forces are defeated. End this now and save what's left of your people." Gralthok stared at the human general for a long moment. In 50 years of conquest, no enemy had ever offered him terms. They had all begged for mercy or fought to the death. This quiet confidence was something entirely new. "I accept your terms," Gralthok said finally. The war was over. The Void Horde, the terror of the galaxy, had been defeated by Earth's tiny army. 1 month later, the same galactic council chamber that had once echoed with laughter now sat in respectful silence. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the same platform where he had been mocked months earlier. But this time, every alien delegate was listening carefully to his words. "The Galactic Defense Coalition has requested that Earth take a leadership role in military planning and training," Jake announced. "We accept this responsibility and look forward to working with all member species." Ambassador Zekthor rose from his seat. The massive reptilian no longer looked amused. "Captain Morrison, the Reptilian Dominion formally requests human military advisors for our forces. We wish to learn your methods of warfare." Similar requests came from every species in the chamber. The Crystal Warriors wanted to study human tactics. The gas form entities wanted human officers to train their forces. Even the smallest civilizations were asking for Earth's help. The tiny army that had been laughed at was now the most respected military force in the galaxy. Humanity had earned its place not through numbers or technology, but through skill, determination, and the willing.